All right. So, hello everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Thank you for attending and accepting to debate with us around the strong link between France and the US and how it contributes to maintaining democracies worldwide. I'd like to introduce today's presenter. So we are four: Hector from Mexico, Sichin from China, Julien and myself, Charline from France. We are an international team of students from the U.S.A, and at the occasion of Biden's inauguration at the White House today, right now, we are organizing this special webinar to remind us all how freedom to travel and to study abroad strengthens democracies. This webinar will be in English, but Julien will translate and write a summary in the Zoom chat in French of everything said after each guest has spoken so that everyone can follow what is discussed. So, Christian, Olivier, le webinaire sera en anglais, mais Julien va faire une traduction en français dans le chat, petit résumé de ce que chaque participant dit, afin que vous puissiez suivre tout au long du webinaire. So talking about our guests, we are very pleased to welcome several guests, such as American professors teaching at the U.S.A, so Mrs. Burleson, Mrs. Coran Kelly, Mrs. Raymond Schneider, Mrs. Robertson, Mr. Palich, and Mr. Pittman. So sorry if I mispronounce your name. And also Mr. Federico Ling should join us. He's the director of the Washington Center. And we have also Mrs. Nadège Marie and Mr. Christian Deleuze, thanks to whom we are organizing this webinar today. So we're gonna go through our webinar by asking some questions to our guests, but feel free to rebound on anything that our speakers say today. And if you have any questions, write them down and be ready to ask them all these questions during our Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So I'm sure everyone has a lot to say regarding our main topic, but I'd like first to introduce you to Mr. Christian Deleuze, who is the founder and president of the French-American Center. So Christian, could you tell us a little bit about the CFA and how it serves to strengthen the strong bond between France and the US, please?
Je vais donc prendre la parole puisque vous me la donnez.
Oui.
Ok. Bonjour à tout le monde et grand plaisir de vous avoir tous parmi nous. The Centre Franco-Américain is a non-profit organization created in May 1992, and that aims is to develop relationship between higher education institution, company, and organization located in France and the United States. As such, for than 29 years now, about 600 students have been through the center and graduate from the French-American Center. And about 1/3 of these students have been able to study and work on both sides of the Atlantic. Our relations with various US universities over the past quarter of a century have only strayed the tail between our region and the United States. The CFA contributes to supporting this exchange by granting scholarship to students wishing to study in the United States and by welcoming American students wishing to improve their language, discover our culture and management methods. As director and then president, I strive to develop all exchange and all research leading to a better mutual knowledge of the culture, of the economic life in our country, as well as the achievement of tasks of common interest, to maintain the privileged relation between our two countries, to promote our ideal of respect, tolerance, and brotherhood through this exchange. I would like to thank all of you for accepting to participate in this exchange, as well as I want to thank Nadège, my former student, for having accepted to succeed me as director, and all the students for having organized this discussion, and who will. I am sure continuing doing this, enjoy to debate. Thank you very much. Enjoy to see you. Merci.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Merci,
so much.
Christian. And thank you for the work you've been doing with the center since 1992. These are some beautiful values and that we are taught at the EAE and during our master. So as you may know, this webinar takes place during an important time for the University of Caen Normandy, which is the International Month. So the University of Caen Normandy is led by Olivier Grassi, who we are pleased to welcome today. And so maybe, Olivier, you can tell us a little bit about this International Month. What is it about? And how does the university promote freedom to travel, to study and work in the US through its partnership?
Merci. Alors, je vais m'exprimer en français. Je suis désolé parce que
Oui,
je ne
pas de
maîtrise pas
problème.
suffisamment bien l'anglais pour m'exprimer en anglais. Déjà, je vous remercie pour l'invitation et je vous remercie pour cette belle initiative. Quand on regarde la typologie des étudiants de l'IAE Caen, nous avons une grosse dominante de publics en formation continue et en apprentissage. Et finalement, ces publics ne nous permettent pas beaucoup de temps pour pouvoir œuvrer sur l'international. Donc, dans les modestes possibilités que nous avons donc nécessité de concentrer nos énergies sur des pépites. Et ce que vous faites, moi je vais qualifier ça de pépite, dans le sens où si nous avons finalement peu de diplômes ouverts à l'international à l'IAE Caen, les diplômes que nous avons sont de grande qualité et nous sommes très très fiers de pouvoir effectivement œuvrer pour rapprocher finalement nos étudiants des étudiants américains. Alors effectivement, dans le cadre du mois à l'international, en ce moment, c'est un petit peu compliqué compte tenu de la crise sanitaire pour envisager des déplacements et donc on est quand même très heureux de pouvoir utiliser tous les outils du numérique qui nous permettent de travailler tous ensemble à distance. J'imagine que vous avez tous aussi hâte de pouvoir à nouveau vous déplacer dans ces contextes internationaux. Le mois de l'international à l'IAE, évidemment, c'est ce master franco-américain. C'est aussi des projets d'ouverture sur d'autres formations qu'on aimerait effectivement pouvoir développer et sur lesquelles nous avons quelques pistes en ce moment. On ne fera pas de l'IAE une multinationale, hein, ce n'est pas l'objectif. On fera de l'IAE effectivement un institut qui va œuvrer sur des diplômes pertinents et particulièrement bien choisis. Voilà, donc je vous remercie pour tout ça et je vous félicite surtout pour cette belle initiative.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. Ça nous fait
Merci
très plaisir
beaucoup.
de vous recevoir. So, a short summary in English for those who do not speak French. Mr. Olivier Grassi, so the director of the IAE Caen, is basically was telling us how he's promoting the university to develop qualitative programs so that students can pursue their studies and also promotes international studies. For example, through our program, we are in the International Management Master, and this is something they keep working on, and they really want to focus on quality over quantity, and this is why we have a good amount of masters, but just the right number so that every student can pursue the right master with the right quality and can pursue their dreams to study abroad and yes, basically keep maintaining those strong links between, for example, here between US and France. So now let's move on to our first theme, which is the historical friendship between France and the US. So Sissi, the floor is yours.
Okay, to talk about this meaningful topic, we are delighted to welcome Mrs. Nadège Marie, the director of the center and head of the International Management Master Program. So Nadège, in light of your role, could you please tell us why it is so important to strengthen the cultural links between our two countries?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I was lucky enough to enroll the IAE of Caen 20-something years ago as a student to study international trade. And at that time, you know, it was just an amazing thing when you could write on your resume that you had spent one semester in a European country. And firms demand have increased, and now they expect applicants to have that very broad awareness, that open mind, and welcome people from different cultures and welcome diversity. So I strongly believe that now it is a must for all students to travel all over the world and immerse themselves in a foreign country, actually, so they can develop new talents that cannot be taught in a classroom and find jobs easily. I mean, that's what that's what I did. I did get a scholarship thanks to the Centre Franco-Américain, spent 1 year in Louisiana, got an MBA, and then spent another 8 years in the United States, and it truly changed my life. And in terms of career opportunities, I don't believe I would have had the same path without those opportunities, really. So that's why now, as Olivier said, we try to do at the IAE to truly help foreign students come and discover French culture, and French students go abroad to the United States and all over the world, sorry, to really help them become world citizens also.
Thank you, Nadege. Your experience highlights how important it is to strengthen the cultural links between our two countries, and your career has definitely proven that living in democracy allows us to complete great things in both countries.
Yeah, indeed. So now let's move on to the third section and the heart of this webinar with interviews and debates to discuss how freedom to travel and to study abroad strengthen democracies. So we will hear our American professors at the IAE sharing their experiences, but first we would like to welcome Mr. Roland Lescure, who Julien is going to present.
Yeah, so thanks, Charlene, and hello, everyone. I'm really glad to see you all tonight. So Mr. Roland Lescure is the deputy for the first constituency of French citizens living outside France and chairman of the Economic Affairs Committee of the National Assembly. Within the framework of this conference, we wanted to question him first on the role of student exchanges in the upholding and prosperity of French-American friendship. Unfortunately, he could not attend the meeting today, but he wanted to leave a message that we are going to show you right now.
Hello everyone, sorry to be with you, but it's nice to be able to talk to you. Over this video, Franco-American exchanges are key, they've been key for centuries, and obviously students are a big part of those cultural, economic, and sometimes even romantic exchanges that we've been having and that we keep on having. Obviously at the time of COVID, it's harder to have student exchanges, it's harder to have love relationship between French and Americans, but we have to make sure that we get out of this crisis as soon as possible. And in the meantime, that we keep on nourishing these exchanges. They are existing between universities. You can do semesters abroad on one side or the other of the Atlantic. They also exist through long-term exchanges, whereby anywhere from undergrad to PhD students spend a lot of their time on one side or the other of the Atlantic. So certainly key for everything else that unites our two countries.
Okay, I'm not too sure whether Mr. Federico Link is here yet.
No, he's not here yet, but
Federico's not here yet.
yeah, we can.
All right.
Maybe you can present his speech later.
Yeah, yeah. So this is something Mr. Roland Lescure said. With COVID, it's harder to have student exchanges, but we need to make sure we get out of this crisis as soon as possible. Indeed, it's really important. And I'm sure Federico Ling will talk about this when he joins. But for now, let's move on to a second video. So Julien.
We asked Mr. Lescure as well in the current context what companies that engage in French-American trade expect and what they need today and for tomorrow in terms of skills and competencies of recent graduates. So here is what you answered.
Well, to begin with, it goes without saying, but sometimes you should repeat it. You should speak pretty good English. Et parler français, c'est aussi important. We are on both sides of the Atlantic, speaking two different languages that are important languages to do business across the world anyway. So it's important to have a good base in both languages, oral, but also written. We very often forget that written skills in the 21st century are still an important part of doing business. I think open-mindedness in terms of culture is very important. When I started working in North America, I realized that the culture is very different. The way we love to fight in a meeting in France, sometimes in pretty harsh ways, and then once the meeting is over, we forget it and move on. Well, when you disagree in North America, it's very often a bit different. You ask questions, you think we should do this differently, or maybe we could do it. Well, in France, it's like, come on, stop the crap, you're just full of bullshit. So important to keep that in mind. And then, of course, the work ethic is very important. It is important here in France, it is important in North America as well. So working hard, adapting yourself to the culture, you know, having lunch in France is still important. In America, you're gonna have lunch on your desk with a lunchbox while you're working with others. It's also coming to France. So this is, I would say, a gap that's less difficult to fill than it was maybe 20 or 30 years ago, where people would love here to have lunch and maybe even sometime a beer or a glass of wine, completely unheard of in the States.
So open-mindedness in terms of culture is pretty important. This is something we just heard, and we all know how different it is to work with a French person compared to an American one or even a Chinese one. But overall, I believe cultural differences are what makes the experience unique and enriching. And this is one of the many benefits international experiences bring.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about, sorry, I don't know. Anyway, yeah. Talking about international experiences benefits, maybe Mrs. Curran, if you are here, could share minds.
Do you all agree with what Deputy Lescure said, that our way of functioning during meetings, during classrooms are very different? What are your perspective from the U.S.? I mean, you've traveled so many times to Caen to teach. Do you really think that the way you lecture is different in both countries?
For example,
it is an interesting mix of approaches, and I've been coaching before I went to France from staff there about how students might expect certain things out of the classroom that we might not be apt to deliver. And but at the same time, it was stated as, but we need our students to get used to the way you do things in the United States, so don't adjust too much to the way things are done in France, which was kind of surprising to me in a way, just because we're so used to one model and you get so deep in it, you don't realize that other people might do things a different way. But yeah, it was different. And I found many times the French students that I had adjusted beautifully to what we were trying to do, and never any complaints or anything like that I can recall.
Cindy, Deborah, do you also feel that you're adapting a bit when you're coming over to teach, or do you think that those cultural aspects, that colored meetings and how we dispatch work and how do we teamwork and team communication tends more and more to converge?
There was some differences, you know, I mean, initially just technical, you know, getting a key to the room, you know, some things like that. But also, I think education is really emerging. You know, in the U.S., we're being told, you know, don't stand and lecture for long periods of time. Be interactive. And I found, you know, students engage more, you know, when they see what's what's going on. I think some of the students were more talkative during class, you know, and I think that was kind of a cultural thing, but also you, as I visited with them and got to know them and began to see, you know, what they were interested in. And also, I think it's, and I'll talk about empathy in my piece, but I think it's just when they show empathy, we're realizing when you make a blunder, you know, and then it's reciprocated, where then, you know, you also show that empathy back.
Interesting. Thank you.
I will.
I'd like to, I'm sorry.
Cindy?
Oh, that's okay. I can comment later.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
I found that my calling on students to answer questions in class initially sort of surprises them. That I use a very interactive approach in the classroom, and I explain that to them. And I find that having class discussions, I have to use different techniques to facilitate that, to help them to feel more comfortable. And my goal is not to put anyone on the spot, but my goal is to allow everyone the opportunity to share their ideas. But normally after 2 or 3 class periods with me, they jump right on in and they understand where I'm coming from, and their participation is very good then.
Okay.
And so I'd like to ask a question to Mr. Robertson and Jeff Pittman. Since you're both professors at Arkansas State University, we'll be really delighted if you could please tell us about your experiences as an American professor in France and the benefits of international experiences. So yeah, maybe Mrs. Robertson, you can start.
Okay, yeah, I've been to France twice now. And for me, I think I learned more than my students did. In fact, I'm pretty sure I did. And I loved it. I realized the common heritage in many ways, the common values we share. We're not exactly the same, but we did have a lot of common values, a lot of ethical discussions, because I taught international law while I was there. And so I brought in a lot of ethical discussions. And like Cindy mentioned, I like interactive classroom, and sometimes not so much lecture. When I could encourage students to be more interactive, I enjoyed it a lot. And I think they began to enjoy that as well. So in terms of the value, I felt that, I've been looking at what employers like to find in their students. And one of the surveys I looked at, ability to work in a team was 77%. Employers want that. Communication skills, 73%. And my students were really good at communicating, both in writing and verbally in France. Problem solving. And one that I want to think about a lot more as I go forward is flexibility and adaptability. Especially with the COVID environment. This is something my son and daughter are both experiencing as they work from home now. My son had to switch jobs after COVID hit because he was in travel industry. And he got a new job, but he's never met his colleagues. He's doing it all from home. And he was in a 1-bedroom apartment with his girlfriend and dog for months, trying to work. And so the adaptability thing was something I learned when I traveled to France. I began to adapt more to different things there. And I think my students learned some adaptability in the classroom. And I would love for all of my students for Arkansas State University to come to France, because many of us become very rooted in where we are and forget how wonderful the rest of the world is and what we can learn from the rest of the world. And so that was my experience, and I hope I get to come back someday soon.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it seems like when you are used to a certain culture, a certain way of working or seeing things, it surprises you once you discover that in another part of the world they think differently, and that's why I think it's really important in a team to have different cultures so that you can solve a problem with different point of views.
Exactly.
Your experience has been really interesting.
That's exactly what Mrs. Nadej Marie is teaching us, because she's our international management teacher, and she's training us at working in intercultural, cross-cultural teams, and this is definitely something important. Yeah, and Mr. Pittman, maybe you can add something about your experience.
Well, thank you, Charlene and Julian. I wanted to echo what Patricia said about the experience in France. One of your earlier speakers talked about love. I fell in love with the country and the culture of France, and I was surprised. I didn't expect it. And I'm forever grateful for Christian Deleuze and the experiences that he fostered through the program, and that Daj and Abe and others are carrying on. The students that I've found in France have been exceptional, very interactive, very much intelligent, but having good cheer about their processes. I haven't noticed what your prior speaker said about French people being abrupt in business and sometimes too direct. I tend to think Americans are at least as abrupt and direct and obnoxious as any other group of people I have found. So students have been excellent. The experience, the university there in Caen is excellent. And like Patricia, I think I have learned more. All of us in education from the professorial side realize that we are blessed to be able to work with bright minds and teach interesting topics. And it is just fun. So I don't have anything critical to say. It's been a great experience.
It's great, yes. And you think that French students are really dynamic and great to work with. And personally, I am French and I've been in the US and I've had several American teachers. And I do think American teachers like you make us want to participate and to get involved in the class. So yeah, thank you for this testimony. It's really interesting. And yes, definitely, as Patricia said, international experiences bring us a lot of cultural benefits, help us develop skills and like adaptability, flexibility. But I do believe receiving an education open to the world, on differences, open-mindedness, helps students become also kind of global citizens. Hector can maybe continue in this.
Yeah, I totally share this point of view, and I think we all do. Let's have two of our professors from Baylor University, Mrs. Bertelsen and Mrs. Schneider. Sorry if I mispronounced like that last name. So let's start with Ms. Bertelsen. Your career is pretty impressive. You have received several teaching and learning scholarships, and you have been teaching since the 80s. We believe you're the best person to talk about these notions. So in your opinion, regarding the changing business environment, how important is to educate students to be global citizens?
I thank you so much for this opportunity. And, you know, I think each one of these experiences, certainly at your university, has really opened my eyes and stretched me. So you take those experiences that you've had and overlay them, you know, in the school, in your educational setting. But I thought we all have so much to learn from each other as global citizens, and students are at a formative time of understanding, you know, all the cultural differences, respecting each other. I think as educators, sometimes we often assume what students should know by the time they get to college. And at the same time, you know, students also want to appear just like we all do, that we have all the answers already. But in my course, we have developed over the last 3 years an international virtual team project. And we work with students at Baylor and students in Caen. And you see discover the common interests and also interests that they never knew about. and the students write reflective notes about after each team's communication. And sometimes it's just the simple nuances where one student wrote from the US, I didn't realize when we visited in the day, it was night in France. You know, and so they know the time difference, and yet when they got to be virtually in a video, they saw, you know, it was night outside. Also, they study companies and cultures in the companies that are based both in the US and France. And I listened to also things that they've, you know, that your students have heard about America that they find's not true. I see them connect in LinkedIn and have a lot of new awarenesses. Something with technology, students from the US begin to realize that the entire world doesn't use Apple products or iMessage, and I stretch them to use WhatsApp. So you think, well, is that a stretch? But for them, they've never used WhatsApp before. And so I see pride in them learning culture and diversity. We could spend the entire time on that. I think it's just so broadening. And this awareness is critical as we look at being global citizens and the decisions that leaders and, you know, you students are our future leaders and our future managers and supervisors, and what you decide impacts the world. And I think I want to just end my comments with what we've all experienced and are currently experiencing this pandemic. If you can take and think of those of you who are students and imagine yourself in your 50s and 60s, you know, someday that will happen. And just think about trying to describe the pandemic. And it's different as you will talk about it than when you experienced it. And I think that's what the virtual team projects in a very small, minute way are, when you experience it versus just saying, oh, I've been to that country or I've seen that. But having that interaction, I think is so critical. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for
It's really interesting what you said about the virtual things that we are now experiencing. And I would like to ask you also, like, how do you think that we can strengthen like the relationship in the next coming years? What you say about Baylor University and U.S.A, but also between France and U.S. in that part?
Oh, well, you know, it's interesting because when you say to me, what I've experienced is in the Normandy region, I feel very welcome. You know, even if someone we don't know each other's languages, I just feel welcome. But, you know, different parts of France feel different, just as America, you know, you can't certainly lump all of America. That would be great if we could say, well, there's one type of American. But it's not quite the same. I think also what we've seen in Zoom, I don't know about you all, but I've used Skype and I've used a lot of interaction. Zoom is kind of that generic, we've all experienced it. But I think having more dialogue like this, you know, having some topics, and because you get more comfortable. We're working with Zoom a lot with students. We have a discussion forum about just Zoom and how to present yourself, because they're going to be doing interviews in Zoom. You know, and so I think to have more, let's pose a question, let's throw it out, let's see, you know, maybe not have all the instructors there, you know, and let you have some time, you know, to visit is always great.
Okay. Thank you so much for your contribution. And also talking about the virtual tools that we can use, I think it is necessary to keep educating young people, especially with this digital stuff right now, since the students all over the world are using like social networks and online education. So in this field, Mrs. Schneider, thank you for being here. And as a professor in information systems from Baylor University also, you're the best to talk about this, I think. So how can online education and social media help us to have a broader view of the world, but also to strengthen the link between France and the US?
Well, one thing in terms of online and social communication is the ability for all of us to do exactly what we're doing right now. We can cut across time zones. We can even cut across, in some ways, different cultural zones so that we can all share and participate at the same time. One of the things with regard to looking specifically at technology and not just social networking systems, but additional technology that every country right now is looking at what impact that technology in terms of artificial intelligence, different forms of robotics, autonomous vehicles. What types of things is that technology going to do to make us look at what policies we currently have? How is that going to impact us internationally? What kind of questions do we need to be asking? Are there ethical considerations with regard to technology that may be important and things that need to be considered? And all of those questions require us to look at it from a wide variety of lenses from our different countries and from our different cultures to help us be able to make some wise decisions and look at the policies of things that are being impacted. A perfect example is how COVID has affected the economy of many different countries. And it's affected our economies in the way that we do not operate like business as usual. And we've tried to learn new ways around that. But in terms of learning new ways around that, we have also determined that digital divide between people who have access, who have good connectivity, and those that do not, is an issue that is faced across the globe. It's not just in the U.S. I am a perfect example of someone that lives in the country, and my connectivity out in the country outside of Waco is not the best. I can afford and I have financial resources to pay for good connectivity, but I don't necessarily get the same connectivity as someone would that lives in the city. And to make that assumption that that connectivity is a constant for everyone, no matter where you live, no matter if you're in an underdeveloped country or a developed country, that is an incorrect assumption. And I think that we have currently in the U.S. many leaders that do not realize that assumption is wrong. And that us being able to use technology to connect and to have those conversations and to realize that the more we rely on that to have us be connected, we've got to consider that portion of the population that's not being considered and that we're leaving out. And that's not just an issue in Zambia or Tanzania or in Texas or in the Normandy region. That's an issue for all countries, no matter where people are living, that these are the types of things with technology we need to be addressing those issues. And I think our ability to bring our different perspectives from our cultures can enhance and lead to a much better decision.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think really interesting. Thank you.
Really important. Yeah, I'm not sure if anyone else wants to add something to these points.
We can pursue with some students we are welcoming today and alumni. So Stacy, you can continue.
After hearing all the insightful perspectives on the in-depth bond between the US and France and the international academic exchanges and the challenges that we are facing right now given the COVID-19, now let's hear from a distinguished U.S.A alumni, Mr. Gallet Gonian. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Mr. Gonian, could you please share with us your experience of studying the French-American track, and how did this international program facilitate your successful career development?
Do you listen to me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
That's perfect.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my story. I'm from the 2019 promotion from the international management program in Caen. It was a great experience for me because I actually come from Africa, from a small country called Cameroon, and before coming to France, I was in China. I was studying Chinese and economics. As far as the master program is concerned, the content of the programs, the teachers, and the skills I learned there was quite a great insight to my career in France, because upon my graduation, after the program, I started working in France as a business manager in a consulting firm. And as many of the teachers just said before me, the most important things are to be flexible, to be able to understand the culture of the country, and to fill in the culture, to fit in the culture. And that was a great challenge for me, because how we do business in Africa and how we do business in Europe is quite different. So I had to learn that on the ground, and it was a great challenge to me during the first 6 months of my experience in France, while working in a company in France. But at the end of the day, I had a great experience during this first year before the COVID-19 hit my company, and I had also great encounters with my colleagues and with customers. And the master program in search is very diverse, as far as people coming from abroad, coming from Africa, from Asia, from France also, and from America. I will also advise people, current students, to be more aware of the impact of how to manage social media, because it is really helpful to know how to use them in order to land a job after your graduation ceremony. And that's how I got a job in France. It was through LinkedIn, and it was really helpful. And during the master program, Mrs. Nadesh also was giving us advice and coaching us how to feel free during interview, and how to be able to conduct an interview with a recruiter. And those insights were very helpful to me after I left Caen. So in conclusion, I had a great experience there, and I always remember my teachers and all my classmates during that year.
Well, it's so exciting to hear all of your academic and professional experience abroad in the international sense, and we can also see the great benefits that our program has provided you given your career development. So in terms of enriching the experience abroad, do you think it's necessary to build an international profile to advance one's career?
It really depends on one personal goal. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I really wanted to begin my career in consulting. Maybe for the classmates, they wanted to launch their career in international business or international trade. And if you want to follow the path of international trade, it is really obvious, and it is really important to develop an international profile to be successful. And that being said, you also have to master many languages if you want to evolve into an international career. And that's why, and I think that's one of the basic criteria to be admitted into the program. And me, I wanted originally to launch my career in consulting. That's what I did. And recently, I quit my job to launch my own business in Africa. And I'm doing a training in entrepreneurship currently to launch my own business in international trade between China and Africa and Cameroon. And the skills I learned during the program in Caen are really great and are really helpful to me right now, because the contest and the requirement for people to be successful in international trade at what are really what taught during the program at U.S.A.
Well, I'm so excited to hear that you are now establishing your own business in Africa, and we can definitely see the importance of building an international profile to advance your career. Okay, thanks for participating in our webinar today. Now let's move to the question and answer section.
Thank you for having me.
So we'd love to hear from all of you now. So does anyone have any question for our guests or would like to share their thoughts on the topic? Maybe Mr. Leslie Palish, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Maybe you want to share a bit about your experience about as an American teacher. Anyone?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. I would be happy to share some. It is, when you think about learning, it happens on different levels of saturation. So you can pass information along to students by means of a lecture. That's one thing. You step it up when you lecture and you show a video about something. They see it, but it's flat, it's two-dimensional. It lacks realism in some ways. And then you can step it up from there to be able to share perhaps virtually with somebody from somewhere else. So that's an interaction, but nothing matches in the end actually being with others so that you can learn from them in a much more saturated way. So it's the ultimate. And so the experience that I've had being in France is wonderful for me. Hopefully it is for the students I've had there. When students from the IAE come to the United States to study at Baylor and other universities, our experience has been the same kind of thing. It's wonderful because our level of understanding is achieved there you can't get elsewhere. So I'm really hoping that this will continue. I am curious to know whether the goal is to expand, to hold on to this kind of program, what the vision is for the future here. I heard the statement that there's an emphasis on quality over quantity, and I understand that, but I'm still a little curious to know where this might be going in the future.
That's such an interesting point, Les. You know, I was about to jump on that. You know, let's look how the friendship between our two countries started. In 1776, the Lafayette General sailed with his troops to the U.S. to join George Washington during the U.S. Revolutionary War. And in 1944, well, you guys, you sent so many soldiers on the D-Day beaches to help France free from the Nazis. Well, it is the same thing that's happening as far as I'm concerned with our program, which is for the last 20-something years, we've been sending quite a few French students abroad to Arkansas, to Louisiana, to Texas, to all of our U.S. partners. And now it's time to move on to the next step and welcome not only you guys, you professors over, but also your students over. That's, I think, how we can help that program be complete, be fulfilled, and I think it can help really strengthen the relationships. What do you think? Am I wrong, or do you think this is a way, I mean, an issue we should advise?
There's no question that we would like to see our students at Baylor have more experience internationally, and France is a wonderful place to have that experience. So I see that as really valuable and a high potential possibility. And also recognize that there are organizational or managerial or financial considerations too with the balance of students, and that's to be respected. So honestly, we have a hard time. Our students get so focused on, they want to get their courses done, they want to get a great paying job or an internship that will lead to a job, and they get into a certain channel, and it's hard for us to sometimes peel them away so that they have an experience that could be so valuable to them. And I've tried to work on that with my students to give them a vision for what they could see themselves doing and how important international experience is to that. And you could see that they're kind of interested in it, but at the same time, you need another step beyond that, right? You can't be just interested. you have to make definite concrete arrangements to make something happen. And our office at Baylor is definitely, the Center for Global Engagement is definitely supportive and interested in seeing our students have these things. But there's a social life, and they don't want to miss their sports seasons and, you know, all these kinds of things. So it's kind of difficult to get them to take that step. But I am at the front of the line in cheering you on, of trying to find a way for us to be able to do that. I definitely want to see our Baylor students do that. And I'm sure the other partner universities feel the same way.
Right. And that's something we need to look into, how to help those students who, as you said, are interested but not going to that extra mile up to the point where they get their passport to come over. That's something that we really need to work on, because maybe we can start working, as Cindy said, through the social media, by doing some presentation of what we kind of to connect them, I don't know, or introduce ourselves, or but I think that's something we can really look into.
I had, Nadesh, I had one of Heston, he don't want me to put him on the hot seat, but I invited him today because he was, well, I invited several, and due to their schedules, at school, looked at, he did such a good job of interacting with the students. And I think when you look at virtual teams, or you look at study abroad, or coming, there's a perseverance that the student needs to have, and I know that our past speaker, how did you pronounce his first name? From Cameroon, who came by way of China, huh? Gail. I saw that in him just from his short rendition, of what he talked about. But Heston Mike could even speak to, what would that be like to spend a semester?
Yeah, that is something that we could work on. And as you already know, we do welcome students from the U.S. for a short period of time, so over a 2-week period or a 3-week period, especially in May and June, and that could make a difference. And we are working on a new approach with another American partner, which would lead to us virtually teaching for a few hours, a class that they have in the US, to start opening their mind, letting them know how we work, and helping them project into that next step that could be to come over. So definitely, to me, that's one of the options that we have, yeah. And that digital world is going to open up new doors. So hopefully that's going to make a difference too.
And this is how we strengthen the strong link we've been talking about between our two countries. And I think these are some amazing initiatives and opportunities. And yes, we have to keep doing that and maintaining the link between our two countries. So,
yeah, especially since there is so much trade and business also in between our two countries. So, you're right, Les. Everybody enjoy living is one's comfort with the sport activity, the friends and stuff. But at the same time, in the US, you're rarely focusing on getting objective and getting things done. And for business majors, that could be an appealing thing also. We are good trade partners, and well, anyway, that could be a source of motivation.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So it's almost the end, unfortunately, but wait until the end because we have a little something to ask you. So we'll conclude this fantastic webinar with some wise words of Mr. Deputy Lescuas again. Wanted to share a beautiful message about what an educational approach to the international dimensions brings to democracy, and what the term of world citizens, as we mentioned previously, means to him. Enjoy.
Well, it's a very important question. Obviously, being a citizen of the world means you're open to others, you're open to change, you're open to diversity, you're open to different work ethics. You're open to what the economy, what the world economy is about and has been about for about 20, 25 years. But on the other hand, being a citizen of the world doesn't mean that you should never forget where you're coming from. Having a strong base is important. Know where you come from, know what your culture is, know what your strengths are, and also what your weaknesses are, is a very important part of who we are. You know, I like to say that when you take a boat, when you want to go far away, you need to sail, but you also need to remember where you sailed from. And I think that students especially need to remember that. When you study abroad, you bring everything you've learned from your past experiences in your national universities, and then you open the arm and learn anything you can from the place you landed in. So good luck with the COVID, good luck with the US-French friendship, and good luck with the love as well, because as we know, the main reason first why people usually move abroad is that because they've met a loved one. Take care.
Yeah, that was a fantastic message. So thank you all for participating. And just before you go, we would like to know if we could take a picture all together by screenshotting our computer screen, and then we can like share it and share.
Good
Oh,
idea.
this webinar was fantastic.
Very nice.
You all agree?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Great, fantastic. So as we are 29, I'm going to do so twice, so like we can have both.
Yes. So if everyone can turn their camera on so that we can see your beautiful faces.
Yes. And I'm gonna tell you before so that you're like with your best smile.
Yes, Eve.
Yeah, cheers. All right.
Bravo.
Cheers. Cheers, guys.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
The first one is done. I'm going to copy it.
J'essaie de faire un shot screen.
All right.
Second one.
Because I don't want to lose it. Yes, that's the first one. All right, so for the second one, 3, 2, 1, cheers.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I have both of them.
A bientôt.
So I hope you enjoy this webinar, and I hope to see you once, and we all want to see you one day.
Yes, it was really interesting. We're really happy that we got the opportunity to talk with all of you, the American professors, the French teachers, all the students. And we will send you a recorded version of this webinar within the next few days. And if you agree, we will post it on our website, the French-American website, and our social media, so that you can maybe share it if you want. And yes, so thank you again. And I hope we will meet in the EIO soon. And when everything is over. And this is yes, this was a very nice moment we got to share with you. So thank you very much once again.